Minutes till the backseaters get online.
I think we're good. How many are we on?
Hey, welcome back to the Minnesota State Fair. We're here at the head of the Midway. Right next door to us, Callie can pan over there, is the French fry. That's the infamous French fry booth. And as you can see, we got a large crowd here. Yesterday in the Midway, this was entirely packed shoulder to shoulder. And if we just pan to the right here a little bit, you can see right here in front of the basketball and the baseball pitching is where we had a shooting incident yesterday. But everybody's back, enjoying themselves. It's important to remember that yesterday there were 250,000 people here. This is the third largest city in Minnesota any given weekend. And yesterday it was the safest city in Minnesota. Granted, we never like to see fights or shootings, but they have become a part of life that become difficult to control. So, with me today are two of the deputies that were the first on the scene. Actually, what happened, there was a large group right over here across the street. Now there was a large fight early on over there next to the French fry station, over here to the left here a little more. Large fight, and we intervened in that fight and dispersed the group with chemical. That was about 20 minutes before the eventual shooting. So that fight was dispersed, but then the groups kind of got back together. And as the groups got back together, they came back, and actually Joe and I, we saw them. We're following a group of about 30 in here to the Midway. We thought maybe they were going down here, but no, they stopped right here. They were clearly confronting one individual. And Joe and I kind of came up from behind the back. Thankfully, Alex was there. This is Deputy Alex Graham. And Deputy Alex Graham and another deputy, Rich Clark, intervened in front of the fight started. And then once the fight started, Alex, why don't you take it from there and just kind of tell them what happened?
Yeah, so a large fight broke out. It's probably the fourth in a series of 30 to 50 people fighting, brawling, kicking, pushing, everything. And so we were dispersing chemical irritant used to break up the fight. Obviously not something we really want to do, but in a large fight like that, it's the only way to safely get control of the crowd. As we were dispersing the chemical irritant, one person who we have information on raised a firearm above their head and discharged a round into the air, causing the crowd to scatter and just to send the State Fair into sheer panic. So our fear obviously is that it's an active shooter situation. Myself, one of the other commanders, Under Sheriff Martin, was out there as well. Started to give foot pursuit to the suspect who disappeared in the crowd. He ran west down the Midway. So our primary concern is if it's an active shooter, to address the problem. And then when that shooting subsides, we want to make sure that we're actually going after the person the safest way possible so as to not enforce or have another incident begin. So we formed a large team of deputies. We went down the alley to the west of the Midway, and then we started removing the crowd from the Midway because of the danger present. It was at that point, this isn't a fun fair anymore. We need to get control of this scene, and the only way to do that, unfortunately, is to have everybody leave the State Fair, which is never our goal, but for the safety of everybody. At that point, as law enforcement, we made the determination to shut it down.
About 20 minutes after the shooting incident, a victim presented himself to the firefighters over here. He had a shot to his leg. We did interview him. I stopped and talked to him. And he went to the hospital. So we're familiar with some of his associates. I mean, obviously what goes on here after 9:30 at night is different than what happens the rest of the day. The entire fair is extremely safe, but after 9:30 on the weekends here in the Midway, it gets to be a collection of people that have conflicts with each other. We had our first fight around 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it just kind of grew throughout the night. So, but really, when you size up the level of safety, it's still very safe. Now, you heard the governor say earlier this morning that there were 30 cops in this Midway area. On this street here, there's at least 30 to 35 police officers. I would say Alex and Joe and I and Rich were probably the closest to the shooting scene, but within 40 feet is another 30 officers. So you can imagine the brazenness of pulling a gun out when all those officers are around. So, and really we're talking about people that have some serious criminal mental health issues that are willing to do that. And obviously the gang life that some of them lead is terrible.
No, I just think it's important to recognize our partners. The Violent Offender Task Force out of Hennepin County was here. The Minneapolis Gang and Gun Unit was assisting. So really, we had some of the best law enforcement heads in the state with our intelligence unit and the criminal investigations unit in Hennepin County. We're working the intelligence angles. So really, those partnerships were so important, and they were really the first three groups. So it was us going to that issue, and it's different when it's live, and it's the difference between peace officers and stuff. People are running away, but you watch these crowd of officers running towards the danger and towards the violence, and that's really, I can't say enough how impressed I was with the Violent Offender Task Force, the Ramsey County deputies, and all those deputies and officers who ran towards the gunfire, not away from it, which is a natural human reaction. I think you'd agree.
We had ample law enforcement officers here, over 200. And granted, keep in mind the sheriff's office is not in charge of the state fair security this year. The state fair has its own police department. We have about 50 deputies that assist here, in addition to some other SWAT members as well. But I will say that the plan was solid. Can you always use extra? Of course you can always use extra. And the state fair is inviting extra in tonight. But having said that, if you get a gun inside here, it's difficult. If a person doesn't care about the consequences of their action, it is very, very difficult to stop them from using a gun on someone. The fencing around here is a good fencing, but it's easy to throw a gun over the top. The metal detection is good, but not perfect. And so, obviously, when you have 250,000 people coming in here, it's not going to be a perfect scenario. So, as you can tell, though, Minnesotans love this state fair. You can tell that there's going to be another 200,000 people here today, and we're going to do everything in our power to keep them safe. It's important to remember that the person that was shot probably was the intended target, or someone close to the intended target, not just a random citizen that was shot. Not in any way saying we can't be better. Law enforcement can always be better. But what happened here yesterday is going to be very difficult to stop anywhere in the country in a group of 250,000 people. So, questions?
Did you say, Bob, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Were you asking a question? Okay. Did you say there was possibly more than one shot fired?
I believe there was one shot fired. However, we know from reports earlier in the evening, we had citizens telling us there was shots fired early. We never recovered any casings, but it seemed like a consensus of the witnesses that we heard 3 shots. Joe and I heard them ourselves here. We believe they were toward the grandstand. Now, having said that, in Kentucky 2 weeks ago, the Kentucky Fair had a rampage because people used firecrackers to start the rampage. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that fireworks could be used to cause that.
So you might have heard more, but it's not been confirmed.
Correct. We can only confirm. I mean, there was a casing laying right here in the street. Alex was there and saw the shot fired. We can only confirm the one shot fired.
You say other law enforcement are being asked to come in tonight. Is that from all around the state, or who we asking to come in?
All around the metro, and I can't reveal who they are, but I can tell you that the state fair has reached out. And after the governor's press conference this morning, many agencies volunteered to send some extra bodies.
Alex, did you have a hard time? You said it was very interesting to me. You said you had a tough decision to make.
Yeah, it's an impossible decision. The hard part is this person has no care for life, and honestly, if you start shooting into the crowd, because of how dense it is here, if you look around, there's people everywhere, and I'm responsible for every action that I take as a law enforcement officer. So the decision I have to make, if I'm going to discharge my firearm or not, I have to not only account for the situation that's happening, but I have to account for the person and what's beyond them and around them. So if I were to discharge my firearm in a very dense population like this, I may have a clear shot at that second, so that doesn't preclude somebody from walking in front. And that's one of those moments that you never want to face as a police officer. It's one of those instantaneous decisions you have to make in your head, and you have to live with the decision. And so I made the decision last night based on the circumstances. I wasn't comfortable taking a shot. But that's my decision. I wouldn't, if somebody else took one and they felt comfortable with it, that's not to preclude.
No, I mean, another of our deputies chased the suspect and confronted him as well, and he saw an opportunity, but chose not to take it at that point as well, which is the best decision. The interesting decision is Alex's use of chemical probably prevented an actual gunfight because he was able to break up the fight with chemicals. The shot was rung out just as he was delivering the chemical. That caused everyone to flee. But if they hadn't fled, more than likely there's more than one gun in that mix, they would have been shooting at each other. And that's the scenario we never want. We never want an out-and-out gunfight.
How difficult is it to chase someone through this crowd?
It's almost impossible, but we're going to try. That's our job, is to go after and stop people who are going to hurt people.
What was it like for you then?
Essentially swimming upstream against the Mississippi. It's you're trying to get through the crowd, not hurt anybody, but it's 1,000 people running the complete opposite direction of the direction that he was running. So Commander Clark did an amazing job of chasing the gentleman, and gentleman's probably a misnomer at this point, but the suspect. But it's heroism. These guys out here, every officer that ran after him are heroes. Point blank period.
Do we know who he is, and are we got a beat on him?
We know who he is, and Joe Miller is our gang expert at the sheriff's office. He's familiar with him and his associates, but we're not able to say specifically who the shooters were at this point. But yes, we are familiar with him. We are familiar with him and his associates. With the shooters.
Okay, talk a little bit about what you're doing tonight that'll be different. Did you say you've got double the amount of law enforcement coming in?
Well,
did I hear that, or
just
is that
a
correct?
reminder.
Yeah,
The sheriff's office.
right.
We were in charge last year.
Right.
We're here to support the
Right.
State Fair Police Department.
With the State Fair Police.
Well, we heard today the Commissioner of Public Safety, he was doubling the number of troopers.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
from 30 to whatever he might need tonight. We know that several other agencies in the metro area have volunteered to send people. In fact, last night they did. Before the shooting, State Fair had already contacted Washington County, Oakdale. Minneapolis is going to be here tonight too. It was significant numbers.
So this sounds like all hands on deck.
All hands on deck tonight. And typically what happens in these all hands on deck is the criminals go to another venue. So it's not unusual for them to decide we're going to settle our scores someplace else because we know the police are going to be there in numbers. But having said that, part of it is letting the public know that we're here, it's going to be safe. Come down and ride on the Kamikaze or the Air Max right here. It's my personal favorite here. Sometimes we stand underneath there and people are throwing up on us. Thank you.
I have one last question.
He was? Yes. Thank you. Yes.
I have one last question.
Outside of the fair.
Yeah.
We saw the video last night, people jumping the fence.
Yes.
Is the county of St. Paul going to be having any extra presence here to kind of discourage that behavior tonight?
Ramsey County is going to take that on themselves. We're going to get help from a number of different agencies. Actually, they're meeting them over there today at 6 o'clock to secure the perimeter. So there'll be a more robust security perimeter tonight than there was last night. Yes.
One last question, if
Yep.
Joe, we can maybe speak toward his mic a little closer.
Yep.
What can you tell us about, if you're familiar with this guy in the gang unit, how bad of an actor is this
We're
guy?
not going to go into that.
Okay.
We're not going to go in. We're not going to prejudge anything in terms of the victim or the suspect, and at this point. But I can tell you, Ramsey County has all of its gang intel experts here, and so when they're roaming around in plain clothes until later. Usually Joe's in plain clothes until he gets the tactical gear on.
But real quick, I can tell you that there were several fights earlier in the evening that we identified several gang members. We recognized several gang members in the crowd. Of course, we won't say their names, but there were several gang members that we recognized inside the crowd, inside the midway.
We were impressed that the governor was using the gang word today. Did you hear that? Did you watch his video? So it's indisputable now that there's a gang issue.
Did you say there? How many fights were there prior to the shooting? Would you say?
About four.
How would you describe them in size? Big fights, large fights.
Well, the first one was one-on-one.
Okay.
About 7:30, there was a one-on-one down here near the pizzeria. And then, as things escalated over here, if you want to pan over to Andy's Grill over here. Andy's Grill. And then the largest one was right here near the again. And then of course the final one was.
How many were here and here, you say?
Well, there's at least 40 here.
There was a fight after the shooting, even after the shot was fired. So, 40 to 50 at least at minimum, with more people jumping in. So, but it's going to be safe tonight. We're going to do everything in our power. And to the person who fired the shot, I wouldn't get comfortable. We're going to find you. You might as well just turn yourself in and make this easy on all of us. Because you got the whole state looking for you at this point in the whole country. So everybody knows who you are, and we're going to find you. It's not a secret.
Just in closing, just keep in mind, I come to this fair every day. You don't see a bulletproof vest on me, right? This is a very safe environment, and a lot of people don't like me, all right? So, well, most do, but a lot of don't. And anyhow, here's the point. This is a safe place, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe tonight. If you have any concerns about the fair, just leave the Midway before 10. It's real simple, because that's only where our problems occur, is right here at the head of the Midway. The rest of the fair, we never really have any problems. And if we do, it's people that cause problems here that are on their way out up Gate 5. So it's a great place to come. Let's set a record. Let's set a Sunday record. I don't know, what were the numbers yesterday? 250,000? Something like that. Other questions?
That's it. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.